Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the Rockingham Select Board regular meeting. It's Tuesday, April 7th, 2020 at 6 p.m. Location tonight, to protect the health of the public, the meeting will be held online via Zoom. A few of us meeting in a public place in person. There's a code for the meeting. If you aren't able to find it, hopefully you're on Fact TV. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Are there any additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting?
We should have an executive session at the end of the meeting for labor relations.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Here he's got gloves and a mask on. Need to approve the minutes for March 17th, 2020.
Motion to approve the minutes, March 17th, 2020.
Seconded. Motion's been made and approved to approve the minutes from March 17th, 2020. Any discussion, questions, comments? Peter, Susan?
All set.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 It's a unanimous voice vote. Approve the minutes. Are there any public comments on items that are not on the agenda? Each person will have 3 minutes.
Gaetano Guy would like to speak.
Shannon? Guy? Yes, sir.
Okay, unmuted. All right. Gaetano and all, I just have two questions. And also, I'm speaking from someone who's an executive director of a nonprofit organization in Brattleboro. First quick question, and it's from my work as an executive director with our board. How and when has the board done a self-evaluation of their own performance? My experience with boards is that this is a key function of any board, so I'm curious to know when this select board has done a self-evaluation of their own performance. Is there an answer to this?
An answer to that.
I'm not hearing what folks are saying. This is a question to folks on the board.
This public comment.
Has the board engaged in a self-evaluation of their performance?
I don't have an answer to that.
I'd like to speak, just respond to that.
Okay.
Guy, as far as I've been on the board, I've never had the self-evaluation of the board. I've been on there for 9-10 years now, and I've never, all the boards I've been on, nobody's ever done a self-evaluation of the board. I don't know what the purpose is.
Well, in one sense, Peter, many of us professionally have been through our own performance reviews and performance evaluation, and a lot of times that includes your own self-evaluation. It's a key role of boards, and there are plenty of documents that are out there, and I would encourage the board to speak with counsel and see and identify a tool that would be helpful for them. To sort of begin seeing, are we all on the same page? And how are we doing given the guidelines of effective and healthy boards? I'm surprised to hear that you're wondering why that is important.
Well, that's how it makes up a board, is they're elected officials who all, I would hope, have different opinions and views. If we all agreed on everything, it wouldn't be much of a point of having an election.
Yeah, that's my feeling also, as long as we can agree to disagree, because we're certainly not going to agree on everything, but as long as we can agree to disagree, I think we'll all get along fine.
That's not what a self-evaluation is about. Clearly, there's a need to have disagreements. It has to do with your evaluation with regard to your role on a board. And are you following those guidelines?
Well, other than the established conflicts of interest or code of ethics, et cetera, I get feedback when I go out to the world every day. I hear something about Rockingham or Bellas Falls or Saxon River from people I work with. When I go to the store, when I go to the gas station, you know, I'll hear feedback tomorrow morning from people who watch the meeting tonight.
I'm sure that. Yeah.
It's a function of the, I hate to say it again, but it's a function of the ballot box. You know, it's nice that your board has some type of criteria that they go through.
Yeah.
But like I agree, like Peter stated, we haven't had that for as long as I've been here.
Okay.
And we do have some discussion as to maybe how we have to do things differently or how we can do things consistently, but I don't see it as an issue. Is there a reason that you do bring it up? Or?
Sure. I look at what are some of the criteria of what are effective board tasks as being a executive director of a board, and right in there from a national board is the evaluation of a staff. And I think that may be a good discussion with town council to see whether in fact this is an appropriate mechanism to fine tune the way we work together, because it's also leading to the other question. And I realize I'm taking more than 3 minutes, so forgive me, but you know, given our history over the past decade or two, with the turnover of town managers, do you see a pattern of turnover as a systemic process problem of board governance?
The only I'm going to comment on is I'm going to say boards do things differently, whether it be the village board, Saxon's River board, or the Rockingham Select Board. But maybe some people need to fathom or be able to fathom that maybe this board has a little bit more general knowledge or a little bit more intimate knowledge than what the general public may have. And that's why we arrive at some of the decisions we arrive at when we do. And of course, going through the past history that you're bringing up, it appears, you know, there's some stuff that very well we can't discuss. So.
Very good, thank you.
Enlightening.
Anyone else?
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
Jim McAuliffe.
Hi there.
Hi. I would just like to know, either from the board or from the manager, what actions are you taking or have you taken with regards to reducing expenses during this very uncertain time? I know we've got other issues, but I do think that's an important one, particularly as time is going by. Thank you.
That's a fantastic question. I would love to hear the answer to that myself.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I've been watching what's going on out in the world, as we all have, and to be honest with you, I believe I'm prepared here tonight to make a motion and for discussion that as far as any non-essential spending, that we don't do anything, that we put the brakes on. Now I'm talking with people just this afternoon. When I get out of work, I stop at the gas station. A gentleman comes up to me, he's talking about his wife. You know, she doesn't have an essential job, so she's not working. They're facing a problem where they may not have the income that they've been normally used to and the everyday world people had been living in until this pandemic occurred. We are jigs under some extreme circumstances here, and I think we need to have a discussion as far as our spending. I understand there's some things we need to maintain day to day, but there's a lot of stuff I think that we can take a look at that may not be essential till this pandemic is over, and then we can reevaluate. But I think we need to put the brakes on some of the spending around here.
I would, entertaining a motion to suspend non-essential spending until we're through this crisis. And we have no idea when we'll recover from this crisis. Financial impact.
I mean,
If you want to make that motion, somebody will second it.
I'll make a motion that the town of Rockingham suspend any and all non-essential spending.
Or does it need to be later? We're still in public comments here.
Do you want me to address that?
I would like it.
Yes. Well, we essentially have stopped non-essential spending. Staff started meeting on this 4 or 5 weeks ago. So we have curtailed expenditures. As I've spoken with you before, we're being very careful about cash. We're updating our end of year projections for both the village and the town. As you know, we're in the middle of town budget or village budget. So this is an opportune time for that. We're looking at programs that are available both for employees, and we're also looking at programs that will help us through this. Like, for example, the state has suspended payment on certain types of debt. And as we've talked about, debt is 18% of the town budget and a significant part of the village budget. So they've suspended that debt significantly. They're delaying the payments, which will obviously help on cash. We've been looking at everything, and Shannon can expand on that. And I have more information I was going to share later on in executive session on that. Shannon, do you want to?
Being very careful and suspending non-essential spending are two different things. You said being very careful. I think the question was suspend. The first item 1, B, and C, in my opinion, are non-essential items.
You're talking about the grant applications?
That's item B and C, number 1 in the agenda. I would consider that to be non-essential spending.
Okay, it's a grant application. Well, I think you should discuss it when you get to it. There's no match on the first one, so.
The first one is firefighting.
Something that you can discuss.
I think firefighting is essential.
Yeah, so do you want to do you want to discuss that when you're at that point on the agenda?
Yes. I think that the suggested motion was suspending, and you used the term being very careful. I think, to go on what Stefan was saying is folks have lost their job. Small businesses have closed. People are not receiving income. People do not know when they will receive income. This is going to affect everything. It's our duty, as I sit here, to do my part to watch our spending. And everyone else is taking these measures to reduce non-essential spending. They're not only being very careful, they're probably not doing the deck project that they had planned this summer because they lost their job. They're probably concerned with feeding their families. Those are essential finances.
I mean, I just got my mail Saturday with my water and sewer bill in there. And to be honest with you, in the last 3 days, I've already heard from people in the village about water and sewer rates again. So, and there's some people telling me they're going to have some difficulty. So I think from a village standpoint, in the other capacity, I think the rest of the board, we're going to have to take a look at that and see how we're going to handle that, because people are going to have to be making decisions whether or not what bills they're going to pay and what's the priorities, whether it be food on the table or, for example, paying a water and sewer bill. And then on the road tonight, coming back down here, I think from public radio, governor declared disaster status of some type. I didn't catch the whole program because trying to do other things on the way here, but there was a comment that we've already spent in the state about $21 million that we're hoping maybe to get back in some form or fashion from FEMA. You know, I was here when we went through with the bridge, et cetera, and it was, you know, I don't think we saw monies back for, it may have been well over a year and longer than that. So,
We'll pick up more discussion. I'm sure we'll pick up this discussion again. I don't know if that answered your question, Jigs. Kind of. I don't know if he's still here. Okay, so anyone else with a public comment? Jigs, I hope we answered your question. All right, moving on. Manager's report, please.
Okay, so obviously COVID-19 is what we're all focusing on, and we are focusing on essential services, and we're doing it with staff having to take protective measures, obviously, so that we preserve our ability to perform. Town hall continues to be closed. If people need to contact us, they can call our regular numbers. All of our phones are forwarded to our cell phones. They can email us. That's all functional. They can access the land records online. It's important to note that the recycling center is still operational. And to note that there was a rumor today that Springfield is closing their recycling center. That's not true. Obviously, if they closed, we would have a tremendous influx into our center, but that is not the case. The recycling center is operating under health standards that have been approved by our health officer. So we're keeping people 6 feet apart. It is taking a little bit more time, but we are operational, and that's important because we don't want people either gathering solid waste at their homes or dumping. The financial workings of the town, we do have some staff at the office preparing the bills that some folks just received. People can pay bills by credit card. What they do is they call us and we tell them, we have to give them the balance. That's why they need to call us. But we're getting a lot of folks paying by credit card, which is great because they may continue to do that in the future. We are suspending the convenience fee just for this period of time to encourage people to do that. I just want to point out what Gary is working with. Gary is supporting both the businesses that are experiencing problems. They can meet with Gary Fox and he can let them know how to quickly and most easily apply for programs, because there's a lot of information out there and a lot of it is duplicative, but Gary can point folks to the right place, and he has met with a few people, and he can elaborate on that if you like. And Gary is also our connection to the Rockingham Help and Helpers organization, which has come up to, it's been organized by Greater Falls Connections and the town to help folks who are quarantined to get needed supplies. And they're working out of the Waypoint Center. They need donations. Gary can expand on the donations, but that is really ramping up, and we expect to be very busy in the next few weeks with that operation, just because more people will be quarantined. So we encourage people to reach out, because we have a lot of folks who might need help but don't want to ask for help. But we do want people to reach out in this time. So rather than going and getting your groceries yourself, reach out to this group and they can find a way to get you what you need. So that is the majority of my report. Did you want to hear anything from Gary about the Rockingham Help and Helpers at this point?
well, how about if we could, Mr. Chairman, if we could, there's some people out there asking, you're talking about paying for stuff with credit cards. And I know there's some people that expressed to me that's not exactly their forte. So how are we handling, we've got taxes coming up next month that are due. How are we handling that as far as what they do? What do you want to tell the public here tonight?
Well, in terms of payments, they can mail their payments in. Is that the question that you're asking?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yes, they
can-
can mail their payments, and Shannon can speak to this too.
I can elaborate a little more. So we can mail your payments. We would prefer not to have a staff employee come down and get your payment. That's the last resort. However, if that is absolutely all you can do, we would set up so that we can meet you outside the town building Monday through Wednesday, 8 to noon. However, we are providing credit card payments. You just call the office, the cash receipts or payables line, anyone in the finance office or my direct line, 1111, and we can take your payment over the phone for a 0% rate. We were charging a convenience fee before, and we've now waived that. So if you call, we can walk you through the process, debit or credit cards, and any major credit cards, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or American Express.
Okay, and if they mail them in, what should they do there? Have we got to be going by the postmark, or how are we doing that?
Yeah, so we are extending and leaving open right now past the due dates. Anything that's postmarked by the due date, we are accepting as current.
Okay, can you reiterate that? Because I didn't quite hear it in reference to American Express and the other card, Discover card you talked about.
About the credit cards, is that what you said?
Yes. You mentioned 2 credit cards you were doing what with?
Well, we are accepting all major credit cards and debit cards and not charging a convenience fee. So you can pay your water, sewer, or taxes over the phone with the finance department and pay just your balance due, of course, with any interest or penalty that you may have to clear up your balance, but with no convenience fee. So it won't cost you any more than sending a check or making a cash payment at the office.
Okay, and what was the specific reference to Discover and American Express? What was that all about?
We accept all major credit cards, American Express, Discover, Visa, MasterCard. And then just to reiterate on the mailing, we will be accepting postmarks. So taxes are due May 11th. And so as long as your postmark is May 11th, it will not incur a late fee or interest.
Okay, very good.
Okay. All set, Wendy?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the agenda, number 1, Development Office, Gary Fox. Can't hear him, Shannon. Hold on, Gary. Gary's muted, Shannon. Hello. There he goes.
The first grant, USDA Community Facilities, I did hear the very valid point about discretionary spending. The $12,500 from the town that is going into this grant was approved on a separate article at town meeting. So I don't know if that makes a difference in terms of not spending the money or not, but
I think firefighting would fall into an essential category. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And so I think a separate article for the spending in town meeting, the funds are restricted to putting into those items. And what this grant provides for are 2 things. There's a couple of pieces of equipment that the Rockingham Volunteer Fire Department don't have. And that's the transport Darley that allows them to combat and extinguish fires off-road, as well as it has a unit to help carry a person out of the woods with, and also a blitz fire monitoring unit, which is a nozzle that can operate by itself on the ground and keep a structure that's next to an ongoing fire from catching fire, from the fire spreading to it. So without that, an extra firefighter needs to be separately having a hose on adjacent structures. So those are the first two items. The other items are basically items that are need to be replaced. They go out of service, either like the turnout gear, they expire with the National Fire Protection Association rules. They're at the end of their lifespan. And also with the air pack bottles for the backpack, same thing. And then the hoses, which are worn out. With some of them need to be replaced because of the condition they're in, and in some cases we need some more length to be able to reach into appropriate lengths. The grant itself, the community facilities grant, pretty competitive with a match of $12,500 from the town and $9,500 from the volunteer fire department. I don't know if there's any questions on this grant before the recommended motion. Okay, so if you look at, go ahead, yeah.
The total is 48,383, or am I reading it wrong?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, so the grant funds are $26,383.
Yeah.
And so the handout that I sent around about an hour ago, that's the actual grant application itself, on page 6 is the signature page, and along with this application, there's also a lot of certifications and assurances. So the recommended motion is to authorize the municipal manager to execute all grant agreements, so that it covers all of the additional certifications and assurances, as well as this application document.
I'll make the motion to approve the filing of the USDA Community Facilities Grant application for $26,833 as presented, including $12,500 matching funds voted in Article 14 at town meeting, and authorize the municipal manager to execute the application grant documents.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve USDA Community Facilities Grant. Any discussion? Susan or Peter, comments?
No, I'm all set.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, we'll do a
Aye.
roll call vote on this one. All those in favor would signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
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 Gaetano, aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, the next item, our Regional Development Corporation, Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, applied for a grant last year, which we supported, which is it's also a USDA Community Facilities grant, but it's for them to sub-grant for technical assistance. So there is no match required for these grants. They're small amounts. And the reason for this request is that the theater committee, and even before the theater committee, the conversation comes up about converting the lower theater to be able to do second run movies, and moving a projector down there when we get a new one on the full opera house. But then it's unclear in how to proceed, and the discussions kind of bogged down in costs and methods, and soundproofing and seating and that sort of stuff. So the purpose of this grant would be to provide an architectural feasibility study that looks at the two alternatives that have been discussed for the most part, and feasibility for them. How easy it is to do that, and what would a cost estimate be. And that would inform the conversation, plus provide documentation for grant applications to get the work done if the theater committee and the select board just so decide to move forward with those.
At this time, I'm not interested in moving forward with that. It's different than it was a year ago when we discussed it. And Dick used the term, it's only $5,000, but I feel like times are different and this is something that I think could be postponed. That's my opinion.
I don't think it harms to apply for a grant if there's no match involved.
It's $5,000. What are we asking for here?
We're asking
You're
for,
asking for 5, right?
Yeah, the town is applying for a $5,000 grant from the regional commission, and there's no match required of the town. So 0 money from the town, but to receive $5,000 for this study.
Yeah, are there any?
So, hold on. So this is to do a study, $5,000 to do a study of the lower theater?
so it's architectural documents. They look at structural work that needs to be done, floor plans, drawings, get cost estimates. There's sound issues. I know with the select board, you've been down there when there's some loud movies before. So having movies and performances in both theaters at the same time. So there's actually quite a lot of work. And BDCC already got this grant to provide technical assistance, and they're active right now in this work, and they want to be providing this technical assistance to their towns, which includes us. So I'm not sure what the downside is. I don't. It's not $5,000 that's available at the USDA for other essential applications.
Well, are there any strings, Gary, that would bind us in the future to, if we accept this money, to have to do other things?
No, there are no strings attached with these feasibility studies.
I still feel like that $5,000 might be needing to go somewhere else at a time like now.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment or two?
Unprecedented times here. Yes, sir.
Well, number one, I at this point, I'm not clear on what this is for. I don't believe there's any minutes that have been published or at least passed around to the select board from the theater committee as to what they wanted. There's several rumors out there of bleacher type seating, things like that. And I don't know if that's appropriate for down there. I know this grant would probably answer some of those questions, but I think the board needs a little bit more information before we can proceed with this. This article, I don't think we should. I think we should pass this over unless there's some strict deadline that has to be applied for right away. I mean, a couple of weeks or maybe a month to hold off before we apply for it, I think would give somebody from the theater committee a chance to update the board on what their plans are, what they were thinking about. Because it could involve several $1,000s going forward with the sound and the seating and the whole 9 yards. I just,
Can I speak for a sec? Is that okay?
Who are you?
Shannon?
Yes, ma'am.
This is nothing that'll cost us money, but will actually tell us what we need to do for work, and we can choose not to do any of it or choose to do some of it, but just having a professional come in and give us advice as to what needs to be done, what in fact is essential to be done, and what we could then do. So it's no money out of our pocket, and we will eventually need to know what to do in that lower theater, both that has to be done and then wants. So in respect to the theater committee, I agree, we do need an updated list of what their wants and needs are, but this would give us an outside professional's opinion for no cost to the municipality.
And I'm on the theater committee, and we have discussed this only, and we don't know what the possibilities are, and we need this feasibility study to see what is possible, and then make recommendations to the select board, because it's ultimately the select board's decision of what improvements may be done to make that space more usable. So this is just a grant to allow us to look at what is possible in that space to improve it, to make it more functional, that would actually bring income to the town in the future.
Yes, sir.
Does that grant involve any which way of looking at the lighting down there? I've been talking about the lighting for years.
Yes, it's alternatives. It does an analysis of the functional and spatial aspects of the theater and what's possible to change and feasible in terms of costs. I mean, you could do anything, but the costs might be ridiculous. So it basically answers questions that need to be answered in order to even have the discussion about what you'd want to do there.
You know, we're talking about this. It's federal tax money. Those are taxpayers' money. I don't think it's responsible to pursue $5,000. That's not a. It's taxpayers' money. It's not free money.
Gary, that you said this money is already in BDC's hands, and they're looking to distribute it in Windham County. Is that correct?
Yes. So it's true. It wouldn't hurt to wait if the concern is that we're in the middle of the pandemic, and wait till we're not in the midst of that and apply at that time.
The deadline? I mean, is there a deadline, or is this an open enrollment?
So BDCC applied for the grant on the deadline and got it, and so now it's rolling applications while they have it. So the only possibilities is the funds in the meantime go elsewhere, but it's not likely that this $5,000 wouldn't be available in a month or two. I'm not sure about that, but I believe that's the case, that there would be no harm in waiting.
Any comment?
Yeah, I don't think it's appropriate right now. I think Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation should hold on to the money for now, and we don't know what's going to happen. So I agree. It's not the right time for it.
But I mean, it's my understanding this funding is earmarked for certain work. You wouldn't just then be able to use this $5,000 for anything that's COVID-19 related, I wouldn't imagine.
That's true.
But if there is a longer time frame that we can apply for it, sure, we can wait. But it's not like it's money that's going to be available for other purposes, correct?
But we don't know that. They're pulling money out everywhere. We don't know how long this is going to last. So I think
this is a grant already received by BDCC, and they have a grant agreement to spend the money for certain parameters. It's not going to be switched over to something else, is what I'm saying.
Maybe they should hold on to it.
If the board seems to want to wait, then we wait. But certain things are going to go on, including grant applications. You can't postpone everything.
Spending $5,000 to pay an architect to give us whatever it is of the basement of the town hall doesn't seem like a priority to me. Seems like the board's consensus is to wait if we could.
Okay, so the other one, the meeting house plaster bid, that's another one that's in the realm of restricted funds approved in a motion in town meeting for this purpose. It's a situation where it is a danger to the public. Last year, a chunk of plaster fell from the bottom side of the balcony to the pews where people sit. We also have a federal grant. Usually the CLG grants, which is what funds the Rockingham Historic Preservation Commission. They generally only fund educational aspects, and about every 10 years, they put some funds into bricks and mortar. And this year, they did put $23,000 of a project for Rockingham into the Meeting House plaster. That work for that grant needs to be completed by September 30th. The matching funds for the plaster, basically the bid that we're asking to award is enough, or the bid matches the funds in the, again, the meeting handout that I sent at about 5 o'clock that says performance-based specifications. Chris Cole has identified the 3 highest priority areas where the plaster is coming out from under the balconies, and the bid by Rory Brennan does address all of those highest priority areas, and it does fit within the amount of money we have between the CLG grant and the meeting, the funds, the restricted funds approved at town meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Gary, with all this non-essential work ethic that's going on, and is this going to interfere with that? I mean, a lot of construction stuff is not being done because of this non-essential stuff. I mean, I support this article because it's, the funds are there, but I mean, are we going to be delayed by, that non-essential order from the government saying that if it's not essential work, I just hate to see us appropriate the money and nothing gets done till next year.
Yeah. So, well, one, the $23,000 portion of the CLG grant has to be completed by this September. So we lose that if we don't do the work till next year. I believe the fact that the plaster is falling to where people go puts this in the construction realm that is essential. It's not safe for the public in the situation that it's in. And when the site meeting occurred and we met the respondents on site to talk about the work, we were already in the situation with the governor's executive order, and both the architect and the bidders were ready to start on June 1st and felt that the work fell within the realm of what they could be out and about doing, given the current climate.
Yeah, I mean, I just, looking at the restrictions that are out there now, the stay-at-home thing, and nobody's traveling and the whole 9 yards. I mean, I say I support the article, so and then also agree with you on the 23,000 getting that work done. But maybe there's some sort of exception we could apply for because of this situation that would allow us to go forward with this. I'm just asking because I don't know.
You mean they would allow us to do this work?
Yeah.
Yes, certainly. The preservation of this national landmark with the preserving the plaster that's in there from the late 1700s falls within essential work. That's U.S. Department of Interior, the national landmark. And if the plaster falls out, you can't preserve it. It's pretty preserving the plaster in place as opposed to trying to recreate plaster from the 1700s is pretty challenging. And this is allowable essential service construction.
It was an extension. What if the guy, this historic plasterer, gets sick, Gary? I think that was the question. Would there be an extension if, because of the current situation, the project doesn't get done before September? I think that was Peter's question.
Okay, I didn't understand that.
That wasn't the question, Gary, but you can answer it if you want.
Okay. So that is a question that you're asking, Gaetano. I do hear that, and I don't know the answer specifically on the extension. I know with other grants, in that grant world, there's other grants with other work that people have been asking for extensions because, for instance, for one of them, there's some training schools, and the teachers that do the conference have to travel and they can't come to it. And it's similar. It's state of Vermont grants from Vermont Department of Labor training grants, and they're saying that it's too bad. You lose the grant funds. There's a timeline on it. You're supposed to meet these conditions by such and such a date, and the money expires. And same with Vermont Community Development Program. We just had some interactions today with them. The Chroma grant is closing out at $600,000. The $150,000 from Robertson Paper, and they're sending emails looking for activities. We're planning on public meetings on May 5th. Pretty much all the public funds, a lot of them are passed through federal funds. They do have pretty rigid strings on them, and they're not setting those aside. Not in any of the experience I've had with them over the past month, at any rate.
I'm ready to make a motion if anybody wants to listen to one. I don't have one that's printed in the paper that you was sent around, but I would move that we would award the contract on Rockingham Meeting House plaster work in the not to exceed amount of $69,900 to Rory Brennan, BWA Inc., and have the manager sign any and all documents related.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to award the contract for Rockingham Meeting House plastic work, $69,900, Rory Brennan. Any discussion? I have one more question, if I may. My understanding is the second bid was, we received 2 bids and I couldn't open the other one because it was 90 pages long.
Yes.
And how much was that one?
$228,000.
So this one was 69 and the other guys was 228,000.
Yes, and if you want to hear a brief explanation of that, I could cover that. Would that be helpful?
I wanted to look at it, but I never had
Okay, so
the other bid.
yeah, so basically the other bid from John Canning Company out of Cheshire, Connecticut. So there's 4 people that would be involved on the job here at the Meeting House. David Riccio, who is the one who came to the site visit, does the advises on the project approach, the conservation and stabilization methods. And then Kara Wadsnitz, who is the director of projects, handles the project administration, the submittals. You know, any construction project, you have submittals that go to the architect, they get approved. So they have this other person doing the submittals. And then you have Mark Stoner, who's the project foreman, who would be executing the stabilization and consolidation method. So he would be overseeing the site work for logistics, making sure the historic cluster is taken care of. And then you have Eamon Elkwild, the plasterer, so the guy who's actually performing the plaster repairs. So you have a lot of people a lot of really strong professionals doing a lot of work. And if you look at a building like the Capitol, the State House in Montpelier, that has incredible hundreds of year old plasterwork, very ornate, very intense. The Meeting House is simple, like a lot of New England meeting houses. It's pretty straightforward. Both Rory Brennan and David Riccio gave similar work descriptions and methods, and they have the work ends up being similar. But for this type of project, the 4 people involved in the work from John Canning is overkill, and an extra $150,000.
Okay. Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded All those in favor would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. The board's contract, Corey Brennan, Rockingham Meter House Plaster Work, $69,900.
Not to exceed. Thank you.
Not to exceed, yep, whatever the motion was.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Gary. Make sure you change your gloves often if you're wearing them around.
Okay.
Once you touch something, they're not effective.
So I changed them from working in the Waypoint. I had a different set of gloves. Being in town hall, I changed them and worn. Yes, good advice. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next, we have number 2, Attorney Ray Masuko. Let's see, he's still there. Overview of select board duties.
Hey, folks. This overview is something that I've done for quite a number of years. I don't think we did it last year. I'm not sure about the year before. I do it by invitation of the boards. I do it from my standpoint, as a public service, something we offer to the boards. The more informed the boards can be, hopefully the less work we have to do on our end. Most of you are familiar generally, but I want to go over some specific actions that the responsibility of the boards, what they can and what they can't do. First of all, the boards are responsible for the general supervision of the affairs of a municipality, whether it's the select board or the trustees. They have no role in the daily administrative or departmental functions. Over the years, this has been an area that's been one of the most difficult concepts for some individual board members to grasp, and one that I've been asked to address, and I know Steve Ancuda has as well, repeatedly. We often talk about micromanaging, which is probably an overused phrase, but we have seen repeated examples of this from every board I've counseled, advised, and in a few cases had to defend over the last 37 years. I can't emphasize too strongly that boards and board members should not be what I call getting into the weeds of municipal government. You're at a much higher level than that, not administrative, not departmental. The boards have a couple primary functions, one of which is the duty to create and implement policies. Make sure they're conveyed to and acknowledged by the board members, the administration, and all employees. As you know, I'm sure you know, we keep an index of all policies with the dates that they were adopted and amended. And these are reviewed on a regular basis. Everything from security to personnel rules to the use of municipal computers, harassment policies, smoking policies. We must have 20 of them. I recommend every year that every board member review them at least once a year to familiarize themselves with them. It's particularly important for new members, but if you serve on the board for any period of time, the policies really take on a different meaning. You view them from a different perspective after you have seen how they come into play with municipal government functions. It's one thing to look at a policy from strictly a hypothetical view, but once you've been involved in the application of those, or had to implement those or defend those, they take on a much different meaning for you. So again, I would urge everybody to look at those once a year. Take them out, read them, doesn't take that long. And sometimes you may find something there that you've forgotten, misremembered. Anyway, it's a good idea to take a look at them. The policies are carried out by the administration. In our case, we adopted a municipal form of government management, manager government over 60 years ago, back in the time of Cecil Bissell. The manager is responsible for the implementation of policies adopted by the boards. The laws relating to municipal managers are very specific and must be followed in every case. They're designed in large part to make the position non-political. Board members' personal agendas and biases have no place in municipal government. I would say in more modern times, we've certainly seen changes to that. I come from an era where I remember where the Cecil Bissonnettes, the Peter LaHaye's, the Babe McAuliffe's, and they ran things much differently than what the law requires today. The law has evolved, it's changed, and we follow that form of government with a manager. I'll give you a couple of examples of a policy, just by way of taking a look at it. A municipality may decide they want police coverage for 84 hours a week. They propose a budget that will pay for that, which the voters would have to approve. How to staff that coverage is a management function, not a board function. The policy is what you want for coverage. How that coverage is applied is a function of administration. The staff coverage is a management function subject to any union contract, which may address employees' safety. We have safety regulations in place for water, wastewater, highway. It may require a good faith effort in this for police, for example, to have 2 officers on duty at all times. How that is staffed is a management function. The policy is a board function, and budgeting is a board function. Another example might be repairing highways. You were just talking about non-essential functions. The board may decide to pave, say, a mile of road during the next paving season and build a budget to pay for that. That's a policy decision. When to schedule the work is a function of management, who will rely on, for example, if we have one, a public works director and also a highway superintendent. So the board's policy is they're going to develop a budget to pay for 1 mile of paving next paving season. How that's carried out is something that's on the shoulders of management, not the board. The board manager relationship is a partnership, if you want to look at it that way. The board is not unlike a corporate board, but only in a very limited fashion. The manager is your CEO. However, governmental boards are much more limited in their role than private companies. There are hundreds of pages of Vermont statutory law that govern boards' authority, open meetings, communication, personnel, and so forth. Unlike private companies, there is a level of openness and transparency that is required by state statutes. Private companies don't have that same restrictions. They can pretty much do what they want within the law, certainly, but they're not open to the public like we are. Boards are responsible for warning all the meetings, specifying the business to be conducted at the meeting. We do this by posting a notice of the meeting, setting out an agenda. We're very good at that. We get the agendas out in time. Public knows what's going to be discussed. We have the option of bringing up matters that are not on the agenda and added to the agenda, subject to being ratified at a later date. We're good about that. We give good notice. We have good agendas, and for the most part, we follow those. Boards propose a budget. That's your other primary function. Propose a budget at the annual meeting. The input to create the budget can and should come from the bottom up. The department heads report to the manager, and the manager and the finance director put together a budget which is presented to the boards. As you know, you go through a long budget process building that, looking for ways to save money, cut money, where to raise revenues, how you're going to raise revenues, looking at projections for taxes, income, and all of that. That's probably, even more so than policy, the budget is probably your single most important function. The budget is what drives the machine that runs the municipalities, whether it's water, sewer, wastewater, police, fire, highway, town hall. Developing that budget is how we fuel the functions that as a municipality we are obligated to provide to our citizens, to our residents. So that budget is a really big deal, as you know, and it's hard work. And it all comes down to the town meeting when the voters decide if they're going to support it, amend it up or down, make cuts, make recommendations. That budget in this case is already in place for the coming fiscal year, and that's our guideline as to how we're going to operate. Select boards govern under the municipal manager form of government, and therefore they have no role, none, in the hiring or firing of employees other than the manager. You have one employee, and that's your manager. Frankly, this is often a source of conflict between boards who do not understand the separation of powers between boards and municipal managers. And that's something I see, not on a constant basis, but on an annual basis, every year comes up. And part of the reason for this, in addition to the municipal form of government, under our personnel rules, under our union contracts, the boards act as an appeals board from personnel actions by the manager. And discipline comes from the bottom up. It goes to the department heads, goes to the HR, it goes to the manager, and ultimately, if there's an appeal, it winds up in front of you. You're the final arbiters. The boards, therefore, can't involve themselves in any disciplinary matters of junior employees until it comes to the board on an appeal. This includes any independent investigations, interviewing employees or third parties, or doing research on the disciplinary matter. That's something not only you're not entitled to do, you're legally obligated not to do. Board members are like judges and jurors. Judges and juries can't get outside information in their decision-making process. They have to deal with what's put before them in the formal course of a disciplinary proceeding. So you have to remain absolutely neutral until it comes to you as the decision makers, if it comes that far in appeal. We don't see many of those, as you know. We've had a couple in the last couple of years. We don't see a lot of those. I tend to be involved in those. I think I've been involved in maybe 10 the last 8 years. But you can't be doing it on your own. Supervising employees other than the manager is not your function, and you're prohibited from doing that. Boards can only act as a board after a majority vote, unless they authorize one or more board members to take action on behalf of the board. And even then, any agreements must come back to the board for ratification. So one board member, two board members can't go off on their own, speaking on behalf of the board, unless they are authorized to do that by a vote of the full board or a majority at a quorum. The union contracts are one such example. You appoint typically one or two members to be in on the negotiations. Those stretch out over a period of time. You have tentative agreements reached, and eventually they bring a contract back to the board for ratification. But until the board ratifies it, no individual member can commit the town to any action. So, and that's something that's very important to remember. We don't see that coming up a lot, but it does come up, and I've had it get in the middle of that where a board member promised something that they had no authority to promise. So it's an area it's easy to stay clear of. Rely on the board. Once the majority approves it, you're good to go. There's one exception, and that's for dogs. If you have a rabid dog, then a board member can take action because it's needed immediately. We don't see a lot of that either, but you may. It could come up. Boards need a majority of the board to have a quorum, as you know, and a majority of the board must vote in favor of a motion to take action. It's not sufficient for a majority at the meeting of vote to take a vote unless they constitute a majority of the entire board. So if you only have 3 people show up, you have a majority. 2/3 majority cannot pass a vote in a meeting. All 3 in that case would have to vote. So you have to have a majority to have a quorum. You have to have a majority of the entire board in order to pass any motion. I don't think that's been an issue. I raise it just because I've seen it come up, but it's not something that comes up very often. And it's just common sense. That's not true for school boards, by the way. They have a different set of rules for passing motions. Communications, that's an area that's been an issue in the past. We have the open meeting law. Anytime 3 or board members are discussing municipal business, they can only do it at a warned meeting in public. Executive sessions are an exception, and those should be limited to really serious matters that require executive sessions. Communication among a quorum constitutes a public meeting. You have to follow all the same rules for that. My general advice is don't use email for municipal business. If you get 3 people on an email string, you've got a public meeting. And if you haven't warned it and opened it up to the public and noticed it and everything else, you're in violation of the open meeting. The exceptions are for non-substantive matters, schedule a meeting, asking for an item to be put on the agenda. You can do that as long as you don't have a discussion about those items, excuse me, or anything else about the meeting itself. So non-substantive communication is fine. Anything else to do with town business, you can't do it. You also can't skirt this requirement. This is an issue I have had to step in on more often than I should. Where one member communicates with the second member communicates with a third, who communicates with a fourth, who communicates with a fifth. You've just created a public meeting. You may not be all in the same chain at the same time, but by virtue of the fact that you have congregated individually to create a quorum, you're in violation of the open meeting law. So that is absolutely prohibited. Don't do it. Sometimes you do it inadvertently. If you realize you've done that, stop. It's easy to do inadvertently, especially if you're doing CCing people or even blindly copying people. If you call 3 or more people in, even on a chain reaction, you have an open meeting and you could be in violation. So I haven't had to defend that in court for a long time, but I have had to in the past, and it's something that's easily avoided. We just don't do it. The Vermont League of Cities and Towns is a tremendous resource. We pay dues, we have access to them for a lot of different things. I would encourage you to take a look at, in particular, the Select Board Handbook. I keep a copy, I keep it updated. It's available online. I don't remember if there's a fee for it or not, maybe for a copy, but I'm sure the town hall probably has a copy. They can make copies for all board members. It's an extremely valuable resource, and I would encourage you to take a look at that. Reread it. It's long. It's a big handbook. It covers some really arcane points which don't come up often, but it has a very, very good overview of your obligations, your duties, what you can do, what you can't do, and how to do things. So use it, rely on it. If questions come up, you can always check in with the town hall through Wendy or the town manager, relay questions to me, of course, but do that. Being a select board member or trustee is a very, very important civic duty. You're elected public officials. You are guided by state statute. You are guided by personnel rules. You are guided by union contracts. We need to follow those. We need to adhere to those. We need to be aware of those. Something that comes up fairly often, and I'm going to leave you with this, under the town manager form of government, like I say, we've been doing that for about 60 years now, maybe give or take a year or two. Just to summarize it, looking at the statute itself, the manager is given general supervisory powers over the affairs of the town and is considered the administrative head of all departments of town government. The town manager performs all duties conferred by law on the select board. I'll repeat that. The town manager performs all duties conferred by law on the select board. There's some other language in there, which is probably important to remember, especially if we're going to be going through a transition. It's important to note that the town manager may exercise his or her authority independently of the select board and may follow his or her own judgment, even when the select board disagrees. That's not to say being insubordinate. I'm just telling you that the manager form of government bestows enormous authority on the manager, not on the board. You have limited authority, which I've defined with the budget and with policies. You have one employee, that's the manager. Take a look at the state statutes, if you will. Take a look at the handbook. I think you'll find them to be very valuable and great guidance. So thanks.
Thank you, Ray.
Can I ask where you were last Tuesday?
Say that again.
Wondering where you were last Tuesday?
Where was I last Tuesday?
Yeah, for our session.
Where was I supposed to be last Tuesday, Gaetano? I gave a presentation for the task force, and then I left the meeting.
Okay, so I mean, just in reference to some of the things you said, I guess I'd have some questions. But what we would consider micromanaging if our one employee now, we were told you were going to be there. We needed you represent council in a.
Okay, I was not on the agenda. I was not aware I was to be attending a later meeting.
I don't make the agendas.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I don't make the agendas.
No, I understand that. I wasn't aware I was not aware I was supposed to be in a meeting.
Okay. Any questions for Ray? Moving on to number 3, Public Works, Everett Hammond.
Okay, hi, how you doing tonight?
Hi there.
Yeah, Green Mountain Power. Okay, this is, I've received quite a bit of documentation from Green Mountain Power. That's what kind of slowed this whole thing down. It's like, what are they looking for from us? So all they're really looking for from the town of Rockingham is up at 706 Rockingham Road for a pole permit request. That's up on the CRT property. There are a bunch of poles they're going to replace all the way up through, from the fire station up through. That will be the state of Vermont. And they will be coordinating with the water department and the sewer department to make sure they're not drilling anything through any kind of services up through there. So they are going to be doing that, previous to, before they start drilling for new poles. But that'll be the state of Vermont, being Route 5, for them to sign off on that. So I looked at this 706 Rockingham, that's at CRT. I don't see any issues up there. I'm not sure if you can see the picture. If you just did a black and white, you'll see the new pole and the grade stake there. And there's anchor, I think, a little bit further down, but there's no issues I see out there, for this pole permit request on 706.
Mr. Chairman, a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
Everett will put the usual recommendation or demand on there that once they put the new pole up, they remove the old one without waiting 5 or 6 years before. I know there's not all the power companies' lines on there, but we got to start enforcing that. There's so many dead poles kicking around town right now that, I don't know how we solve that situation other than going to the PSP.
No.
The other question I have goes back to your comment about the state doing Route 5. Rumor has it they were going to put them on the reverse side of the street. Do you know that, or is that yet to be determined?
No, they're not putting them on the riverside. As far as I know, you'll see ribbons around all those poles. They're going to replace those poles as close as possible. Probably within 2 feet, maybe 3 feet of where they are right now.
Yeah, I just hate to see them ruin that river view up there. That's the only good view we got around here.
Right, but that's a good idea. Having put in there, we can type that in there.
Yeah.
Old poles to be removed within maybe 6 months.
Within 1 year. I think we did it. I think that usually we're within 1 year of installation of new one.
Right, and originally, before all this virus came through, when this was first being talked about by Green Mountain Power, I suggested they come to the board to kind of give a presentation. So exactly what you're talking about. So we can ask questions, how are we doing around town?
Yeah. And
they have been making progress. It may not seem like lightning speed, but they have been pulling some lines out and some poles. Yeah. I don't know exactly where, but it's not, Green Mountain Power is actually excellent to deal with. And when you get involved with Consolidated Communications, that throws an extra loop in there.
Yep.
And then talking to the guy from Consolidated, he's a contract engineer, which has no control of the crew. So that's not easy to get an answer from them. VTEL hasn't been real bad to deal with, but it's not as simple as make things happen that fast, unfortunately. And things are starting to move forward on that with the state of Vermont. They recognize it's been an issue, but I think putting that in there is good.
Thanks, Everett.
Entertain motion.
I'll make the motion that, Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we approve the pole permit request for the Rockingham Street on 706 Rockingham Street, CRT building.
Authorize the chairman to sign the attachment.
No, I'll add that to it.
I'll second that motion.
Motion been made and seconded to approve Green Mountain Power 706 Rockingham Road pole permit request. Have the chairman sign the attached plan sheet form 6 required by Green Mountain Power, and also a note to have them remove it within a year. Correct? You broke up at the end, Peter. I don't know if you added that.
Yeah, no, yeah. Make sure that we put that statement that they remove the old poles.
Okay, great.
Within a year.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next.
Okay, an annual financial plan is something that the select board sees every year. This is based on a previous form, certificate of highway mileage, which there was no change from a year ago. The rates you'll see on attached. So it's a matter of, actually, it's not all totaled up. It's class 1 road is 17,250. Class 2 road is 65,770. Class 3 roads 96,435. That'll be state aid from the state of Vermont. That'll come down, I believe it's 4 times a year. And quarterly payments, but anyway, it's throughout the year. So there's It's a simple request, unless the town doesn't want it. I don't believe that would be the case.
Anticipate delays with this whole COVID thing there and the situation in the state financials.
I have not heard that. That'll be a governor thing. If it happens, if it happens to the town of Rockingham, it'll happen to all of them.
Yeah, I realize that. I just threw that out.
And it could be. I mean, I think they did that once, probably 20 years ago. There was a delay for some reason. And I'm not sure what the reason was, but you know, if they're looking for some funds for things to turn around, which they will be, that could happen. Or it could even be across the board, a 10% cut. Who knows? I don't know.
I've heard rumors they're going to cut somewhere, but I can't remember exactly the percentage I heard.
Okay, no action needed there, right?
Well, there is actually, there's the last page on page 2-2. So we'll need approval by the select board and for you guys. I don't know how we're going to sign that, but.
How am I going to sign the Green Mountain Power one too? Is that?
Yeah, you could sign that one. You know what I could do, Gaetano, is ask the minutes saying the board approves this and have you sign this and pass it along to Megan down at the state of Vermont and find out if that'll be adequate. You know, to get everybody in here to sign this, you know, I think it would be right. I don't think they'll have a problem with that. So if you want to sign this one as well, but with the minutes from the, you know, with the minutes saying, yes, the board recommends and approves it. I think we try that route first.
Yes, I also don't have a copy of the Green Mountain Power one either, Evan.
Okay.
Nothing here for me to sign, so maybe I can catch up with you and you can give me that. Yeah. So, do we need a motion and edit it to have the chairperson, or do you want these three members to sign it? And what do you want to do?
Do you have one copy? Any of you right there?
I do.
Ben and Stefan?
We all have a copy, all three of us here.
Okay, why don't you sign one of those, and that'll be the majority. Then we'll leave Pete and Sue, as long as the vote goes with it, we'll leave Pete and Sue out of it.
Okay.
That'll work.
So then have the motion be to approve the annual financial plan and authorize the members of the select board to sign it.
I'll second that motion if you're making it, Wendy.
I'm suggesting it.
Yeah, you know.
So Peter, you'll make that motion as said by Wendy.
Yeah, I'll whatever she said, I'll use it as a motion if I need to make it.
Made, you got a second?
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. To approve V-Trans annual financial plan and what the manager said, we've signed it here. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next.
You on a roll, Everett?
Yeah, okay, we're getting there. Yeah, 1/3 done. Cemetery maintenance bid recommendation. So we put out the bid after Eric Clark stopped mowing the cemeteries. So we put out a bid last year. It was Ben Stalker from Hook and Horn. He did it 2019. We had a couple of small issues early on, but we addressed that. Malcolm and I met him out in one of the cemeteries, the Saxon River one in person. Resolved that right off. He's done adequate job for us. No reason not to continue. A lot of work he does out there for what you're saying is $35,305. So it's my recommendation is to continue with Ben from Hook and Horn Landscape at the rates above for the 2020 calendar year. And then we've got one more year. We can see how he does this year and address the next one. You guys can address the next one next year.
So Everett, we're just continuing the current contract with him for the 3-year one, I think.
Yeah, the only difference is he didn't charge the Meeting House Bank. You know, he kind of did that last year. He didn't charge it. He should have been. He was a little not sure if it was in there. I said, no, that was above and beyond the RFP. So that's the only difference is you're going to see the $200. And that probably won't be 6 times a year. Like it says 7 there, actually. It's going to be as needed. So it might be 5 times. But he'll use his judgment on, you know, between him and talking to Malcolm. So that's the only difference. You know, he was doing some stuff essentially for free last year. So thank you, Ben.
Okay,
I move that the town of Rockingham contract with Ben Stalker of Cook and Horn Landscape at the rates listed in the above table for the 2020 calendar year.
I'll second that.
motion's been made and seconded. Town of Rockingham contract Ben Stocker, Hook and Horn Landscape, the rates listed in the above table for the 2020 calendar year. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, the next one, parks maintenance recommendation for 2020. Eric Clark has been doing this, he thought 12 years, but I know it's been at least 10 years from what I've heard. And he's actually, I thought I wrote down all the parks. So this is actually the Waypoint Center, Centennial Park, I believe it's the ball field up there, and the playground, Well Street Playground, for $89.92.5. That was what was billed last year. He will do it the same rate, continue that for another year, with just an additional $100 for removing the leaves in the Centennial parking lot. He's been doing that anyway, so that's actually doing the town a big favor by him picking those leaves up in that parking lot. So there's quite a bit of mowing he does, you know, all that, plus the fertilizer. He applies that at the right times. My recommendation is to continue with Eric Clark for another year at his same rates, plus the additional $100.
Yeah, but he, didn't he do out by the vault? Did you mention that? I know I've seen him blowing leaves off of that.
He's already started the spring maintenance, the spring cleanup, right?
Does he do anything with Eddie Green? That's stuff by the bank, TD Bank? Does
He does. He does Eddie Green.
Okay.
That's not part of this 89.92. That's the village mowing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a village. Okay.
Right.
Why does he clean up the leaves at Centennial?
Well, I think they're just out there. I'm not sure why he does it, but it's when he actually happens to do his spring cleanup and do the mowing, it's just easier for him to scoop them all up. He's got the truck. You know, for $100, he's got better equipment than we got. So I think that's well worth $100.
Who's responsible for cleaning up the leaves at the tennis court? Do you know?
I believe that'd be probably the Parks and Rec.
Okay. Motion?
Move that the town of Rockingham contract with Eric Clark for park maintenance at Centennial Park, Waypoint Center, Wells Street Playground, the Rockingham Recreation Center, at the same rates as 2019, plus an additional $100 for removing the leaves from Centennial Park.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to contract with Eric Clark for park mowing extension as read by Mr. Mashore. Any discussion? All those in favor would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, this next one is kind of hard to do probably over the phone without putting a big map up on the wall, but we'll just kind of touch. This was actually, we'll just touch base down through here just so you have an idea. The total footage of sidewalk in the village is 11.2 miles. You've got the replaced conditions, which is number one condition. That would be on the map, the red color. 4,718 feet, so almost a mile there. The poor condition, rating number 2, or the yellow color, 8982 feet. Not quite, a little shy of probably 1.75 miles. I didn't do the math on that, but in that ballpark. Number 3, fair, that's the green. That's 20,719 feet, or roughly 4 miles. Number 4, good, that's 12,944, a little bit over 2 miles. And number 5, excellent, 11,597, again, a little bit over 2 miles there. Total of 58,960 feet. And so some of this, I think it's been talked about in the past, but there's at some point in the future, I think the town and village should look at putting this on there. It's a lot of sidewalks for a small village, a lot to maintain. My opinion, I think, is more than you need. There are some things you look at doing is removal of sidewalks on some streets. That's just one idea, removal of sidewalks on one side of the street. You know, if you take it off on one side of the street, leave it. The best thing to do is leave the sidewalk on the north side of the street. That the north side of the street actually gets, you know, it's backwards from like the moss on a tree. The north side on the street, you've got the houses on the south side blocking the sun from hitting the north side. So ideally, that's the best thing to do is put the sidewalk on the north side. Won't probably work in all cases. Granite curb, asphalt sidewalks should be looked at. Concrete curb and concrete sidewalks. You know, we have done some of that in the past. There are some advantages there. Some of that being where sometimes you've got a granite curb and asphalt sidewalk. Over time, you'll see actually the asphalt settle down, sometimes an inch. You know, and then you've got overlay. That's the same thing we're going to be doing this summer. The crew will be doing this summer on Church Place. There's 250, 300 feet of sidewalk there. We're going to be looking at actually, I've got Wally he's going to try to develop something with a grader. So we're actually going to put a little extension on the grader and try to actually use, instead of hiring that out, we're going to try to have it, you know, with a grader and the moldboard, put it down through there at 1/4 inch per foot. Nope. What's that? Oh, sorry.
On Church Place?
Church Place, right. That's up there by the church.
Did you say what crew's doing that?
Yeah, we're gonna try to do it with a grader blade. We're gonna try to develop a little screed, paving screed. It's 5 feet, so we can put that at 1/4 inch per foot, drag that up through there, and with the next, if we end up buying that small sidewalk tractor, we can actually then dribble pavement in front of it and pave down through there instead of getting. And this actually, if this works, it could actually be a way of doing a lot of paved sidewalks in the town with a granite curb, if you've got the sidewalk right next to it. You know, and if it doesn't, I'm not sure if it even extends out 5 feet. I haven't had a chance to check that out yet. But we could bolt something onto the moldboard if we had to.
I have a question, Everett.
Yep.
Is this map different than the one we got last year? It says 2019.
Yeah, this one's updated. You didn't get one last year. If you did, probably 2014 or an older version, way older version.
Oh, we did. You and a highway guy had updated
Right.
it, presented it to us. But isn't Oak Street between Atkinson and Green, it's on this map, isn't that brand new? 2 years old?
Let's see.
And I think the rest of it wouldn't be yellow either, didn't that? Or am I wrong? Just the asphalt got done on that
Yeah,
section.
let me look at that one. Maybe that one there.
But no, I thought we did, the foam pole was in the way and we widened it so they could plow it and removed it on the north side maybe. There's a new sidewalk on that street.
Right, there is on the Oak section of Oak Street. And it's possible, there was a lot of notes going through a notebook when I did this. And every time I did something, I would circle it. That it's possible that street didn't, you know, for example, Williams, you look at Williams Street, it's blue, it's dark blue, so that's updated.
It is updated. That's
Right.
all.
But it looks like that's good pickup on that one, Gaetano. That Oak Street does not look right.
I remember the discussion, I was on the board and that foam pole on the corner of Atkinson and Oak was in the road again. And it's on the other side, it's in the road again, remember? And Mike was here and we discussed it and we moved it and made the sidewalks, whatever you guys request to get the machine on there.
Right. And which street was that?
Oh,
Oh, I wasn't here when they did Oak, so.
yeah, but so it's new asphalt and then I'm pretty sure we did the sidewalks too.
That's correct. Yep, it is new. So that rating on that one's not right.
What about Saxon's River? Is that a map that we would need for?
There is one on that that's not real old. Well, it might be 6, 7 years old. So it's usable. The one that, because things haven't changed that much out there.
Any idea how many feet roughly out there?
I'd have to look that one up. That's on my older computer.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Chairman? You said, Everett, that things haven't changed about out here. You haven't looked at Grove Street, have you? That hill coming out by going up towards the school there off of 121 is about a 5-foot chunk that's heaved up. You can almost pick it up and carry it away if you're strong enough. And some of the places on Main Street, from the park on, they did with the pavement, and it looks really good there, the pavement on there. But there's some sections along Main Street that are all chewed up too, so
Okay,
you
yeah,
might want to take a look at them.
we'll take a look.
The rest of them don't look all that bad from what I've been walking.
No, I don't believe,
Constitutionals.
I haven't, that did not get walked, so whether, I don't believe there's major changes over the last 5 to 6 years, but there are probably a couple exceptions on Grove Street, maybe Main
Yeah,
Street.
well, that one there, just going up the hill there, right by the post office there, about
Right.
5 feet up, there's a big chunk that's heaved right up there and broken
Okay.
off.
Yep. So really no decision here. It's just kind of given the presentation, and at some point, it really should be looked at, because with that, when you're talking, for example, 4,718 feet, if you only do 500 feet a year, that's the replace condition, is 10 years worth of work. And if you're looking at number 2, the poor condition, that's 8982, there's 18 years work. So there's 28 years at 500 feet a year, just to replace number 1 and 2. So that's a long time out there with, and I don't believe you'll ever get caught up.
And then at that, perhaps discussing eliminating some, like you'd already discussed. That seems like it'd be a good discussion to have.
That was brought up years ago. It didn't go well, but the town is funding this now.
Yep.
So it probably should still be maybe a town discussion first, and then sit down with the trustees in a joint meeting.
Okay.
But
I have a question here.
Well, I have some comments.
Comments here.
Not representing the board of trustees, but the consensus I've had is that we like our sidewalks. People in the village should get out and walk. It's a walking community. They like the sidewalks. So we can have the discussion again. I'd be interested to see where it falls. We've talked at one point eliminating sidewalks, and that wasn't too well received in the public realm. Also, in the last few years, we've invested or set aside and allotted substantial amounts of money for sidewalks. So here we are again. We're going to talk about eliminating some sidewalks. I understand maybe plowing one side in the winter and not the other. But here we are talking about eliminating sidewalks, and I'm not so sure I like that idea. And the question I have specifically applies down to Russell Street. We have I contacted you earlier in the late last year, I believe it wasn't earlier this year, or at least I spoke to the manager. And I spoke to you ever at one point in time. What's going on with that sidewalk on the south end of the street, reference to what I said to the stop sign on the corner of Russell and Atkinson? Because it looks like the road, I don't know what was done for work on that house or something in the basement or what, but came home one day and there was a bunch of barricade tape that was up, or there wasn't up at one point, then was up. Chunk of the sidewalk, approximately 8 feet, was out there laying above the rest of the sidewalk. And just recently, it looks to me, if I recollect correctly, and a lot of times I go to work in the dark and I come home in the dark, but looks like that chunk of sidewalk, approximately 8 feet of it, is gone, and the section there has been filled in with Surepac. So what's happening with that? Was there a reason that somebody had to dig down on that sidewalk?
there is. Okay, that's at the time, Richard Gay owned it. I believe he might have. I think he sold it or is selling it pretty soon. And I did talk to him recently. I said that sidewalk does need to be replaced. Well, first off, that the hole that you see is a sewer line they had to replace. So they had to do that first. And at the time of year wasn't to the point where it was Hodgkins did the work. I said, no, let's not waste any good money after bad, and let's not put concrete back in there. That whole sidewalk needs to be done. So when the plant opens up, at least patch it back in there with asphalt to get through. And then for that sidewalk to be replaced, what needs to happen is Richard Gay or the new owner, and I've talked to Richard Gay about this, they need to stabilize their foundation, because what's happening there is the inside of the foundation is shifting just a little bit. So the last thing the town wants to do is take the liability on. Let's dig down through there and replace the sidewalk and the curb, and then have this happening all over again. And maybe even add to the problem of the foundation, by digging down, putting gravel in, compacting. So before I get out of here, I'll make sure I put that in writing in a letter to either Richard Gay or the new owner, just so they are aware of that. And it's something, you're not talking many feet, less than 100 feet. whenever they stabilize that foundation, even if 100 feet's not in the budget, we probably could sneak that in there and get that work done.
Yeah, but what I'm looking at, there's also, I mean, I lived there too. I noticed the road was heaving at one point, and it seems to have heaved more since it was dug up. Now, that whole section from approximately 6 Russell right up to the corner, I believe it's 110 Atkinson. You can see where about 4 foot of that is heaved out from the sidewalk. The pavement there is.
Right, yeah. And that's part of the, I'm sure if you look at the rating, let's see,
My understanding also was that if somebody came along, and I'm using the School Street example, if they dug up a cement sidewalk, that we were gonna have them put back a cement sidewalk.
normally, I would normally agree with you. In this case here, you're putting something bad and a bad pitch back in there. So it's putting good money after bad. So in this case, I would say let's have them patch it back in there. You know, because they're gonna be pitching, you're gonna have to match that short section and pitching it back toward the house. So why have the landowner, which is in this case, pay that cost, or the new landowner, to put to put back an inferior sidewalk, pitching the wrong way. So
Yeah.
I would not agree. Trust me, I agree with what you're saying, except in this case here.
Okay, we got another comment here, and then I'll see if Peter or Susan has any comments.
Just going off what Stefan said a little bit, I think the sidewalks in the village definitely need to be looked at, as far as there's a lot of streets, you know, I know they're in fairly good condition up on the north end, Morgan's Field area, but I don't think all those streets need sidewalks on each side. You know, the main streets, Atkinson, School Street, ones like that, obviously both sides, but I definitely agree that's something we need to look at.
Yeah. Oh, can I add one thing just to what Ben was saying there? If, for example, up on Brown, Taylor, Gove, and all those streets up there, if we were to put in the adequate sidewalk, 5 foot, maybe a 5 foot sidewalk with a curb, or even just a 5 foot with a curb, 5.5, either one, you do not have room on those streets to put in one on the south side, one on the north side, or there'd be no place to park in the middle.
They're not getting plowed right now.
No, do not get plowed right. They do not now. And so if you ever did something up there, I would look at putting it on the north side and only one side.
7 months out of the year, the folks don't use them. Right?
About 5 months.
5 to 7, depending what happens.
Hope not 7.
Well, there are some people that do maintain the sidewalks in front of their house, for whether it be postal delivery or whatever else. What I'm saying is, if it's there and it's not presenting an issue, why tear up a good sidewalk even though it's not the best? You know, aside from the what I'll call a safety barrier between the street and the property, especially with a curb there, that's if somebody's using that other points of the year or parts of the year, you have a well-defined curb, the car probably hopefully won't jump.
Right. No, that's a very good point. In fact, that's what basically the last conversation we had probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Pretty much the same thing, Stefan. In other words, we're not going to go in there. It would not make sense for the town to go in there and rip up a sidewalk that was in fair, good, or excellent condition. If it's there, leave it. You know, because you're right. Some people do use that. You know, even up where Ellen's mother lived, that was a section sidewalk in decent shape. So maybe someone wants to go back out there, and if they have a grandkid, ride back and forth on that little stretch of sidewalk. If it's not a problem, leave it right there. I agree with that. Don't make work for nothing.
You got any questions or comments, Peter?
Yeah, I got one. If you just remember about ripping up sidewalks, I don't know which the name of that street. I think it's Summer Street at the end by the trailer park there. You rip that one up, and next thing you know, there's such a stink road, you had to put it back in.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever really connected with one on Main Street. I think it came a little short, but you did end up replacing that one. So there is an issue you're going to come up against. So it is going to lead to interesting discussion.
Okay.
The understanding with that one, Peter, was that the sidewalk was supposed to be taken care of and put back. And whatever administrative action that occurred, eliminated it. And we stepped up to the plate from the village and had it put back.
All right. Susan, anything?
I'm all set, thanks.
Okay, thank you. You all set, Everett?
Yeah, all set. We're not gonna solve this one tonight. And I'm not necessarily saying let's go out and start ripping sidewalks up. If Susan Small here is probably gonna have that right in the paper. Sorry, Susan, but
I had a couple questions. I don't know if you're gonna stick around for other business or I could ask them now.
I can, either way.
Oh, yeah, sorry, we got the sidewalk machine.
Right, there's one more, right?
I don't have that
I don't
information.
have that.
Well, that's my, whatever page print out.
I didn't get that information. But I'd like to hear your,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so we're all set. There's no decision needs to be made on the sidewalks itself. So the sidewalk tractor purchase. It's, so that was last fall, we put it out to bid as a lease option, okay? It was Ambrose Equipment, Tri-County, and at the time there was a third, which was like a trackless type thing, which is those trackless, I don't believe they even put in. In the past, we've been buying trackless machines. Those are right around $150,000, 140 to 150. Very, very expensive machines to run and maintain. This has been kind of up and coming. A lot of the towns around have been using these. And so it's become a little more popular. It's a lot more cost effective. But I didn't want to just go out and buy one and find out it's not going to work. It wasn't a real busy winter to try to make it work, but we did get some good input on it. Gary was probably the best one that gave some good input. So you'll see that the Ambrose equipment, for example, the original bid was $93,300 with a 60-inch pickup broom was $4,500 and extended warranty $2,500, and we've already leased $18,000 worth. So we're looking at add that up, subtract the $18,000 because they'll take 100% of the $18,000 off of the original purchase. So that'll leave you down to $82,300. We could decide to take it back to let it go, but at some point that trackless is pretty old. I think it's a 2011. Like I said, when one goes down, that means we're bringing in the very, very old one in from, I think it's 2001 or something like that, from Saks River to help. And there's a good chance that if we start robbing from one to from Saks River to bring it here, that even the old one could go down. It was Mike's idea to let's not necessarily get rid of that trackless at this point. Let's see how this machine works out. It has worked. One of the problems that the guys had was the front end was hard to steer. We can load those with the calcium chloride, so that adds a little weight to the front. That'll give the steering capability back in. That's what some of the towns have been doing. But with a lease, we didn't want to try to do that with a lease machine.
Everett, if I could, before we get off.
No, yep.
On the front tires, the tires for the load, I understand that. Calcium chloride deteriorates and eats the rims. A lot of people nowadays are using beet juice, which is about the same amount of weight, I'm told. Is there a reason why if we were to go with this and agree to it, we couldn't use beet juice? I know somebody who just replaced a couple of rims.
We got more questions.
Yeah. No, beet juice. Yeah. If we go with this beet juice or some other option, is definitely something worth considering. So in a budget, there's $140,000 in a budget with a $50,000 down payment that we would not need. And that $50,000 down payment would actually go toward the combination compactor with Westminster that was purchased. So it is my recommendation to this is a machine that can be used much more than the trackless machines that we have in the summertime. Even like I said, it's got a front, it's like a mini loader. There's a bucket that goes in the front that can be used one of the garages, or in this case, like that sidewalk we want to plow. If we end up developing some type of screed on the wing of the grader, we could actually take asphalt, feed it into the bucket, and sprinkle that in front of the grader and just keep dragging the screed down. And that may be something that we could use on a bunch of other sidewalks as asphalt sidewalks if they become more popular in town. So I'll let you, so if we were to buy this right now, I realize you don't have all this stuff. The purchase price right now would be $82,300.
Ever, wasn't it? I talked to the guys when somebody asked me if I'd gone up and seen that, and walked up there one day and everybody was there and did get some information on it. They said it's very easy to change all the attachments to it that compared to some of the other tractors we had. It's just like you drive up and hook them right on, and you don't spend, plenty of time for another hour trying to connect hoses and everything else to it. So I think that's a plus.
It is, yeah.
And it just, they said it seemed to work pretty well for them. So other than the steering problem, I didn't know anything about that at the time, but. And all those attachments come with this, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking about the 82,300, that's assuming we've done 4 months of lease payments. It took a while to get the machine here because their price difference between Ambrose and Tri-County contractors was 93.3 for Ambrose and 102,501 for Tri-County. The reason Ambrose was so low is they actually were able to commit to a lower price when they had enough machines at the lower price. So there's a difference there. But we did not still get the machine until, if it was January and we've only paid 3 months, the total difference would be, for example, if we've only paid 3 lease payments, it'll be 4,500 times 3 off the purchase price. So the total would be, I wish I knew that right now, unless Shannon's there and she can look that up to see how many payments we made. So it's going to be either at total 82,300 if we made 4 payments, or 82,300 plus the 45.
Got a couple comments here.
So that'd be 86.8. Yep.
Ready?
Yep.
Go ahead.
I have heard from lots of highway guys that had run it that said that they didn't like it. I don't know if they were talked to about it, but that's what I've heard so far, that the majority of them didn't like it compared to what we've had.
Right, I have talked to them. A lot of it was, at one point, we did break the window. The door was shut with a branch there, so that lost us 2-3 weeks during the middle of winter, because then it would needed a gasket to go with that. I guess it's probably like a Cadillac versus driving a Chevy. Yes, they would probably like the trackless, $150,000. This will do the work. Gary drove it, gave you pretty much an independent opinion of what he thought. He said, no, that machine will do the work. And you're going to find that from any point of, anybody working it. Andy didn't really drive this much, but some of the other guys did. And, I'm looking for a machine that will do the work. It may not be the Cadillac, but we got to start thinking anywhere from $100,000 machine to $150,000 machine. That's a big difference. And then maybe the next one down the road, this one eventually could be taken out to Saxon River. And if this works again, you'd buy another one. And down the road, it looks like an easy machine to repair as well. A lot easier than, except for waiting for the gasket. The trackless, it's tough to get parts on those. The holders, Springfield may have one of those. Those are around 190,000. And I think those are German machine, very expensive. And the parts aren't easily available. So no, you're right. I talked to them. You can't make them all happy.
Who ran it? You said
Jerry ran it. Jerry and Gary. Zach might have run it a couple times.
Who did the sidewalks?
That was plus some of the water guys did too. Some of that was Josh in the sewer, and John and BB up there in the water department. So it was a mix of different people. In the past, we used to have one person run, just do sidewalks, but that position has been eliminated. So you do get a mixed bag of people in there.
I never saw it, and I heard too from that they didn't like it, and I never saw it then. I always saw the old ones, and that's what I've been told, is that they don't like it. And then my question about your 60-inch pickup broom. What are you talking here? Like a front mount broom, power broom?
Right, front mounted. You can actually go along in a pile. Say if the guys are doing a small road job on the side of the road and you want to pick up some of the gravel and grit, you can just buzz that in. It'd be like a skid steer broom that picks it up.
Is it too wide for sidewalks?
The sidewalks, we try to usually blow it off into the street, and then that's what we usually do with that. This would be more for small, maybe downtown or like small construction jobs.
I mean, I'm looking at the sidewalks right now and just the condition of the sidewalks. Would this thing work on half of the sidewalks to clean them up? The ones that aren't clean right now?
Yeah, most of them are swept right now. There's very few that are swept right now, the sidewalks.
When did they do that? It was just
Yeah, that
yesterday.
was back when we had early break, early March, when we did a lot of the road sweeping.
The sidewalks are not swept.
Majority of them are.
I look at them every day and they're not. So that would be just a special implement. It's not, couldn't be used for some of the sidewalks was my question.
No, it could, oh yeah, some of the sidewalks could be used for. That's correct. You can.
Everett, too, the fact that that thing can pick it up and has a little storage compartment on it, when that compartment gets filled, they can just pick it up, dump it right in the truck and keep moving. You don't
Right.
have to have a second guy there to pick up the piles. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So you're saving some money on labor. Plus, I think the adaptability of this machine to do more than one thing with a bucket and a few other attachments that come with it, I think we're ahead of the game on that than going with a trackless. I agree with that.
Yeah, one of the things I've always felt, I've mentioned this for the last 15, 20 years, those trackless and holders, you know, anything you buy, any municipality, they buy those things. It seems like the most outpriced piece of equipment in town, you know, for the value. If you look at one, you know, something like that is, you could buy a loader for the same, you know, John Deere 544 for the same price as one of those. Doesn't make any sense.
One other comment, what would happen with that little ride-on sidewalk plow that we bought for about $9,300? Would we be looking to get rid of that thing somewhere down?
No, that's the one actually, Monty Barnett recommended. We still use that. That's a good one as well for picking up. But sometimes if one person comes in early in the morning for downtown, the ins and outs, you know, that we use that small one, the tenant sweeper, when you sit
No,
up.
I'm talking about the little plow thing that we bought.
Oh, that's only for plowing.
Yeah. So what's the intent with that? Are we getting rid of that, or are we gonna hold on to that for something spare?
No, hold on that. The guys use it. Mark used it last year, plowing sidewalks. You stand on it, you push around. And reason being, we've had a very hard time getting part-time help.
Yeah, I know it.
You know, it's, you know, Mike, every year he's nervous about that.
Yeah.
For good reason.
Yeah, you can't get shovelers either, so.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, part-time help, shovelers.
Yeah.
So we're gonna make sure if we were to move forward that we're not gonna use calcium chloride or anything?
Oh, yeah, I like that beet juice idea.
I mean, that's what they're doing, yeah.
Anything other than calcium chloride, if there's an option out there, I'll talk to Wally about that. I'm sure he's heard of something else, but beet juice, I don't know why that wouldn't work.
Well, that's what they're doing in the tractors that I'm familiar with.
Okay, I have not heard that.
So we're looking for a motion to move forward with this thing, or we?
Right, yeah, because right now it's either they take it back and they can sell it to someone else, or we invest in the 82,000. Well, it's going to be 82,300 or 86,800. I wish I had that answer. It's going to probably the best way of looking at it would be 82,000. Hang on, 82,300 plus 18,000. So it's 100,300 less the lease credit.
How old is this machine?
That's the total cost with all the added options is 100,300
How
less the lease credit.
old is the machine, Everett? What year is it?
2000. I think it's a 19. I believe it's a 19. It was a new machine when we got it.
Okay.
He just had older pricing on it versus tri-county contractors out of Springfield, Mass.
Everett, I thought you said the price was 93 something.
But okay, 93.3. You add in the pickup room 4,500 and the 2,500 extended warranty.
Oh, okay, I got you.
That gets you to 100,300.
Okay.
Okay, less the lease. So if we've got 3 months payment on lease, it'll be less 4,500 times 3. If we've got 4 months, it'll be 4,500 times 4. I believe we've only got 3.
The number here says 82. Is that not accurate?
No, like I said, that's assuming that we had 4 months worth of lease credit. Because they delayed, so what happened is, but they delayed trying to get it. You know, we didn't get it till closer to January. So January, February, March.
Wasn't that what we budgeted to try the thing for a winter?
Yep.
We budgeted that 18 grand, so then where's the rest of that?
Right, but keep in mind, we didn't, if we only spent 3 months worth of lease, then we did not spend 18,000.
I understand, but where's the other 4,500 if we budgeted for it? We had this,
Oh, that'd be still sitting in the highway fund right now.
we had the discussion last year, that we put that much funds to try this thing out. And my understanding is most people don't like it, but now you're saying, going on possibly loading the tires, it'll work. But my question is why, where's the money that I don't know what these numbers are here. If we don't know how many months we paid the lease, what's the number we're looking for today? How did it go up more than it was last year?
I mean, the price is still the same, so it's a matter of 100,000, 300. I mean, you know, less 3 months at 4,500 or 4 months at 4,500. I'm not seeing the latest financial. I think we've only paid 3. So either way, you're still talking the same price of the machine.
Can I make a suggestion?
Go for it. I think we need a motion.
If you do want to purchase the machine, just make the motion to approve the purchase, subtracting the lease credits to date, because we may even have more payments before we get to this purchase.
Yeah, I think we're clear on that part. I was just,
I mean, if our intent this year is to try and save some money, I can't think of a better way to do it than knocking $40,000 off of a piece of equipment. You're looking at $150,000 for a trackless, and you're only looking at about $90,000 if I'm somewhere near right on this machine. So there's money you're going to save right there, and money's in the budget. So
people that are operating it, Peter, are saying it doesn't work like the others. So how much is it adding into labor costs? If the thing's slower and not as efficient.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you might have a couple trips back. There's not a lot of extra labor cost added in there. We still have the old machine, so you know, in one machine in the past has been tough to try to make this. You know, we're talking about sidewalks, maintaining sidewalks. One machine's been real hard trying to make it work. This actually, in tandem with the other one, allows us to actually use both, get it done a little quicker. You know, if one guy gets done with the plow route, you know, we might have a part-timer in a sidewalk machine, but then someone else could jump in the second, you know, the old trackless, and you know, it might help sand. You know, because you know we've been struggling and we've lost sidewalks a number of years in a row. Not every year, but I know there's years we do lose them, and we still will in the future. The town will. When you get that freezing rain and the temperature that drops,
Okay.
you know, down to 0 that night, you pretty much lose some roads too. So yeah, you're not going to make all the guys happy. You know, there's a lot of towns, they're all over the place going with these for that reason.
I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion that the town of Rockingham purchase the Whacker nuisance sidewalk machine for the balance of the machine after the Ambrose lease payments have been deducted.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded for the sidewalk machine purchase. Any other discussion? All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Susan, motion passes.
Was it 3-2 or what was the vote?
I vote.
No,
I vote for the record.
4-1, it sounds like, right?
We need a voice vote here, please.
Peter, aye.
Susan, aye.
All those Nay?
Ben, no.
Gaetano, no. 3-2 passes. I have a couple questions. If, I was gonna ask him another business, but if Everett wants to leave, could I ask him now?
Sure, yeah. That's all right. I'm all right with it.
Okay, you ready? What are we doing with the chip seal on Rockingham Street? The fact that it was repaired once, that's less than a year old.
Right. So I have talked to the guy. He was sick for a while, and he's basically still stranded down there. He had pneumonia, and we texted back and forth a couple weeks ago, probably 3 weeks ago, and he said no, it's pretty scary out there, so he did not want to come up to look at it. I'm still trying to chase him down when he comes up in the area, and no matter what happens, we're not going to be able to do that. You know, if we do any kind of repair work on that, it won't happen until probably August. I've looked at it though, and I haven't had a chance to go through and put a straight edge on it. Almost what it looks like to me is might be a little ruts on each side, and probably and I'm not gonna mention this to the guy from Allstates, but my feeling is when we move snow, it's probably the grader blade that's scratching that out of there. Because if you've got ruts that are on each side of that just a little bit, that grader blade will put down pressure on and scratch that snow out of there, and maybe a little bit of top. So if, you know, but I'm going to still have him look at it, see what his recommendation is. You know, he can easily spray that one, because it is different spots. I did look at it again. You're right. It's not the same. You know, at the time, the angle when I was looking at it, it looked like it could be the same. I don't believe any of it is. And like I said, I want to put a straight edge on it, look at it. The most, and if there might be 1 or 2% in that whole section of road, probably 2%. You know, what's missing there, but the rest of the road is being preserved. So at this point, it's probably more aesthetic value than anything else.
Well, so all I know is we paid a lot of money for it. We were told it was going to get us 5 to 10 years, and it also came with a 1-year warranty. So right now, heading south, you're having to drive out of your lane to avoid the big bumps, and it's clear what caused it, but I still question the application of the project. It doesn't seem to stick like all the rest. The other side of the arch bridge didn't have that problem. So if it's the material that's under it or the application, but my concern is we paid a lot of money for it. It looks like it's 10 years old. We got ruts in the road where we're having to drive around already on another brand new surface. And if it's a 1-year warranty, we should take advantage of that.
Right. Yep. No, that's my intention to get hold of the guy.
And then, is there an update with the catch basin or the manhole that's across from the Masonic Temple? What's the status?
I'm waiting for the hot mix plant, so we don't want to be putting cold patch in there. We're going to wait for the hot mix plant and put in asphalt. But that catch basin cover was cracked. It's something we hit during the wintertime with the plow. So it still catches water. It's not going anywhere.
So the answer to the chip seal was the guy was sick and you're hoping he's going to call you back? Is that what
Well, no, he will. I mean, he'll be up. He's just trying to stay in Massachusetts at this point, not be coming up here, you know, until things lighten up.
Okay. That's all I got. Anybody else got anything? Okay, moving along, we review agenda items for the next meeting, which would be April 21st.
Right, and let me catch Everett and Gary while they're still here. Gary, I think you have a couple of grant applications planned, right, for the next meeting?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
And
and
so-
all the public hearings for the grants will be on May 5th meeting.
which is the following meeting.
Yep.
Okay, and then Everett, I think you have bid awards for the paving and for the chip seal
And a plow truck.
and the plow truck. Okay. And then we also have the Depot Street Bridge preliminary design from V-Trans. And that's all that I have now.
And Wendy, I think one of your emails told us that on that 421, that Route 5 V-Trans was gonna come down and discuss Route 5 bridge there that they want to replace, maybe not this year, but they were gonna close the road down there.
Yeah, they can
Narrow
do,
bridge over the railroad.
right. I thought that they could do that either end of April or early May, and I thought they'd probably want to postpone it as long as they could, just because of COVID and not being physically.
Yeah, there's no problem. I just thought that your email had mentioned that that was scheduled for them.
Okay,
One of the dates mentioned.
I'll check on it. Thanks for.
The other thing I think we need to get on that discussion is the Public Works Director position. We need to have a discussion on which way we're going with that. I think Everett needs to know, and you know, we should make a decision, or not necessarily a decision, but we need to have a discussion of where we're going with that position. It's been recommended that we keep it from the town meeting, but it's, as they say, those who vote against it are taking their chances at the polls. So I think we need a discussion, find out where it's going.
We already had
Oh,
that.
I have.
We already had that discussion.
Well, I think it needs to go forward because it's been brought up at town meeting.
Regardless, there's money that was put into the budget again that we have to discuss.
Yeah, one way to do this is that was a change that was made to the budget, and there were a couple of others, and Shannon and I wanted to update the budget in a formal way before the end of this fiscal year, because we did have some challenges this year working on a budget that was pre-town meeting. So I think it would be better for the folks in the future if we update the budget, and the director position can be part of that discussion as well as any other changes that
Okay. Works for me.
Yep.
Shannon, did you have anything to add on that?
No, just exactly what you said, update it formally with the adjustments made at town meeting.
Okay.
All right, review agenda items for joint board, June 30th. Anything at this time?
I don't have anything.
Anyone else? Review and approve orders, bills, and warrants.
So moved.
Seconded.
What's been made and seconded. Review and approve orders, bills, and warrants. I'm not sure how we're all signing these things these days either.
Right.
Wendy, is there any way to check whether we can do like e-signatures, like on a what do you call it, a PDF?
I think we could do that, or we could do them approval by via email. So if we send them to the group of you, if you don't reply all, but you reply to, like, for instance, if I send them to everyone and you reply approved, that would qualify as a signature right now.
We got 3 signatures here right now. I don't know if these are official copies.
They can be official copies. Go ahead and sign them. And I think you already signed, Gaetano. So technically just the chair or the alternate need to sign.
Right, but we got majority signatures here, so I'll
Yeah,
just do.
so you might as well.
All right.
Shannon? Wendy?
Yes, Kathleen?
I still need to get together with them. They need to sign those liquor licenses for me.
I did at the last meeting, Kathleen, when they were at the board meeting, we signed them. Me, Stefan, Ben Mashur at the joint board meeting last Tuesday.
At the joint board meeting?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that they were there, but I'll take a look again, because the ones I looked at did not have signatures on them the other day, but.
Last time I was there.
Okay, I'll take a look.
Here's a result from search.
There was
Thank
a stick on the table with a note that said, select board, please sign, and I passed it to these 2 gentlemen.
Okay, I'll take a look again. Thank you.
All those in favor, we made a motion?
Yes.
Yep, seconded, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, other business? Start here to my left,
Not at this time.
nothing. Nothing. Peter?
Just like to say, it was good to see the highway crew out there making, sweeping up the streets, getting the dust up. I know Saxon River is almost completed, if not, is done.
Susan?
I'm all set, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Gaetano, this is Shannon. Can I just say something under other business?
Yes.
I would just like to thank all of our essential employees, and this week especially to Pam and Brenda. They have been so diligent and working so hard in the offices to keep us going. We would not function without incoming revenue and outgoing payables. So I just wanted to say thank you.
I echo that. Thanks, Shannon.
Good, and thanks for saying that, Shannon. Good.
Okay, executive session for labor relations. Someone needs to make a motion.
I'll make the motion that we enter into an executive session to discuss personnel, i.e. labor relations, where premature general knowledge may clearly place the municipality at a substantial disadvantage.